The human ship arrived exactly where the models said it would. High Admiral Sereth observed from the Council Command dais as Sol's outer perimeter resolved into tactical clarity. One contact, singular, no escorts, no defensive lattice. The hull, profile rotated slowly, angular and exposed, its armor segmented instead of sheathed in continuous energy fields. A relic. Confirm classification, Sereth said, voice smooth. Confirmed, the sensor prefect replied. Immass crude, geometry inefficient, no visible shield bloom. Propulsion signatures substandard. A ripple of restrained amusement passed through the assembled admirals. Beyond the dais, the Council Armada held its positions, 10,000 vessels. Arranged in 5 overlapping arcs, weapons warmed, compliance windows already calculated. The distance was generous, 2.1 AU. Time enough to be thorough. They still build them like this? One admiral asked. Physical armor, open surfaces. Cultural inertia, Sereth replied. Some species cling to history even as it fails them. The legal minister overlaid annexation templates without being asked. Population estimates populated in neat columns. Labor redistribution projections followed, conservative and optimistic side by side. The language was already finalized. Processing. Category? The minister asked. Sereth glanced once more at the rotating hull. Standard, planetary seizure, workforce integration, command cadres removed for compliance conditioning. Another note appeared automatically. Species, status, administrable. They had done this before, 67 times in the last 100 cycles alone. The pattern never varied. First contact resistance, brief demonstration of force, acceptance, useful. Survivors. The human ship broadcast nothing. A junior officer frowned. No diplomatic handshake packet. They are primitive, Sereth said. Latency is expected. The Armada's firing solutions settled into place, elegant and complete. Energy yields tuned to disable, not obliterate. The Council did not waste assets. It repurposed them. Begin formal notice, Sereth ordered. Inspection and tribute demand. The packet went out in 42 translated dialects, delivered with impeccable courtesy. Power down instructions, boarding timelines, consequences. Clearly enumerated. The human vessel did not respond. Seconds passed, 12, then 20. One of the admirals chuckled. Perhaps they're debating which myths to invoke. Sereth allowed himself a thin smile. Record the silence. It will be educational. The compliance timer began its descent, numbers shrinking with soothing inevitability. Around the chamber, Indides relaxed. The outcome was already archived, waiting only for timestamps. Relics don't argue, they get catalogued. On the tactical display, the human ship adjusted its orientation by less than a degree. The change was insignificant. Beneath doctrine. No one remarked on it. Sereth folded his hands. When the window closes, he said, we proceed. The Armada held steady, confident in mass, history, and arithmetic that had never failed them. Beyond the glass, the stars were still. And somewhere between the last laugh and the first shot, the Council mistook silence for submission. The reply arrived without ceremony or delay. High Admiral Sereth watched the incoming signal cut cleanly through Council priority bands, its carrier synchronized to fleet time within 0.001 seconds. No. Encryption layers bloomed. No diplomatic wrappers unfolded. The transmission simply asserted itself, broad spectrum and precise, as if it had always belonged there. Source confirmed, the sensor prefect said. Single origin, human vessel. The holodome, translated automatically. This is the United Earth ship Resolute, a human voice said. Calm, unaccented, neither loud nor deferential. You have entered a sovereign system. A murmur crossed the dais. Not the words, the tone. Inspection is refused, the voice continued. Tribute demands are denied. Sereth raised a hand, silencing the chamber. Continue. Boarding attempts will be treated as hostile action. The compliance timer on the display hesitated, then continued. Its count from 300 seconds. 5 minutes. Generous. Sereth leaned forward. They are issuing a refusal without justification. Yes, the legal minister said. No appeal to ignorance, no petition. The human voice resumed. You are ordered to withdraw all vessels beyond the sole heliopause. Minimum vector change, 15 degrees off plane. Departure window, 6 minutes. A countdown appeared uninvited on the holodome. Clean numerals. No flourish. Sixth. 359. One admiral laughed, sharp and incredulous. They're dictating terms. To whom? Another asked. To us, the tactician said quietly. From one ship. Sereth felt irritation bloom, not anger, but disruption. Clarify consequences, he ordered. A second council packet launched, firmer than the first. Citations of authority, historical precedents, predictive models, casualty projections, human vessel neutralized in under 90 seconds. System pacified within 6 hours. The reply returned in 2.3 seconds. Projections received, the human voice said. They are incorrect. Silence followed. Not static. Intent. Then, this is your final notice. Withdraw. Additional data appended. Itself to the broadcast. Safe exit corridors mapped in detail. Gravitational shear warnings highlighted. Engine tolerances calculated for hulls ranging from 50 meters to 12 kilometers. Council ship classes mirrored back with unsettling accuracy. They've profiled us, the security chief said. No intrusion detected, the prefect replied. They're predicting. The timer crossed 180 seconds. Sereth straightened. They misunderstand scale. Or, the tactician said, careful, they understand it very well. Sereth ignored him. Record this as refusal to submit. Escalation protocol will proceed at 0. The human voice spoke again, unchanged. We are not requesting terms. A pause, perfectly measured. We are giving them. Terms refused. The words appeared briefly on an independent observer overlay, flagged as anomalous sentiment detection. The countdown reached 60 seconds. Sereth folded his hands, composed. So noted, he said. They will learn. Across the void, the Resolute, held position, weapons cold, engines steady. It did not posture. It did not threaten. It had already finished speaking. The timer continued its descent, each second narrowing the gap between administration and something far less familiar. Withdrawal had been offered, compliance had been explained, and, for the first time in centuries, the Council found itself being instructed to leave. The order to fire was administrative, not emotional. Escalation authorized, High Admiral Sereth said. Yield Tier 1, disable only. Across the Council Armada, 10,000 vessels responded as one. Capacitors charged, emitters aligned. Energy lances stitched forward space with disciplined precision, converging on the lone human hull at a range of 1.9 million kilometers. Frequencies cycled through optimized bands, calibrated to collapse shields, then peel armor, then end resistance without waste. The first volley struck. Expected outcomes populated the holodome in green. Shield failure at 0.6 seconds. Hull breach at 1.3. Total neutralization by 3.0. None of them occurred. No shield bloom, the sensor prefect said, confused. No thermal spike. The beams washed over the Resolute and broke apart, spilling light across angled plates and vanishing into darkness. Heat diffused outward, then inward, absorbed by mass that did not glow or buckle. Damage indicators hesitated, then updated late. Ablation, 2.8%. Structural compromise, 0. Fire again, Sereth said. The second volley tightened, yield increased by 35%. Pulse timing adjusted, convergence optimized, still nothing. The human ship rolled 0.4 degrees. Energy slid off its surfaces, refracted, by geometry that denied focus. Void-spaced armor gaps, meters wide, bled heat into nothing. Radiators flared briefly, controlled and deliberate, then dimmed. Effectiveness down, the system announced. Weapon efficiency at target reduced to 14%. 14%. That number drew silence. They're not shielding, the tactician said. They're letting it in. A third volley followed, broader and hotter. Power draw spiked across the Armada. One cruiser pushed beyond tolerance. A breaker tripped, dropping it out of formation for 2.1 seconds. The Resolute did not fire. No damage. The words appeared on an independent observer panel, flagged by a neutral analytics suite running. Verification. Armor loss averaged 4.6%. Internal temperatures peaked and stabilized. No fires, no decompression, no crew distress indicators. Sereth leaned forward. Explain. The sensor prefect swallowed. Mass distribution is extreme. They're using layered density and spacing. To kill energy internally, heat sinks buried deep. There's no single surface to overwhelm. Impossible, Sereth said, though the display disagreed. A fourth volley struck. Frequencies widened in brute force approximation. The human hull blackened in strips, then steadied. Radiative loss increased to match input. The numbers flattened. Energy. Absorption efficiency, 97%. The timer marked 90 seconds of sustained fire. Casualty projections inverted. They're enduring, someone whispered. On purpose. Sereth felt irritation sharpen into something colder. Cease fire, he ordered. Recalculate. The beams cut out. Darkness returned, punctured only by the Resolute, intact and unhurried, presenting fresh armor as it adjusted. Orientation by another fraction of a degree. A data packet arrived from the human ship, riding open channels without permission. Energy profiles observed, the human voice said, calm as before. Current output achieves no lethal effect. A pause. Further fire will not improve outcomes. Recalibration failed. The phrase appeared on a coalition observer feed, then propagated. Sereth straightened, refusing to look away. They wanted this, he said. Yes, the tactician replied. They wanted our numbers. Across the Armada, firing solutions dissolved into uncertainty. Elegant weapons had met mass and lost. The human ship had not defended. It had measured. The Resolute drifted forward by kilometers now, slow and deliberate, engines whispering to life as if the exchange had merely concluded a test phase. Sereth watched the distance begin to close and understood. Too late. What the silence had been for, fire had failed, and whatever came next would not rely on light at all. They moved before recalculation finished. The Resolute's engines lit without warning. No charge flare, no thermal bloom, just motion. Council. Sensors lagged by half a second, then corrected violently as the human ship's vector updated again. Acceleration spike, the sensor prefect said, reading 12G. The number hung in the chamber. No biological crew survives that, an admiral said automatically. Reading sustained, the prefect replied. 30 seconds, 40. Distance collapsed, from 1.9 million kilometers to under 1 million in less than a minute. The human ship did not rush headlong. It cut diagonally through the engagement volume, threading between predicted firing cones with fractional adjustments, 0.2 degrees, then 0.6, each too small to look evasive, each large enough to invalidate. Targeting solutions. They're inside our lead windows, the tactician said. Our fire control can't settle. Council formations began to strain. The Armada's 5 arcs were designed for standoff dominance, overlapping fields at fixed ranges. The Resolute did not respect range, it respected timing. As it crossed the outer arc, ships maneuvered to compensate, tightening spacing to preserve coverage. Microgaps opened, kilometers wide, then tens. Command latency crept upward, 0.4 seconds, then 0.7, enough to matter. Arc 3 cohesion down 16%, the system announced. Sereth felt the first edge of unease. They're forcing us to move. Yes, the tactician said. We're reacting to their vector. The Resolute surged again. Still 12G, it passed through the thinning arc like a blade, decelerated for exactly 3 seconds, then pivoted around its center mass. The maneuver cost it nothing. 6 council cruisers broke formation to avoid collision, their engines flaring in panic. No shots were fired, just motion. Proximity alarms chimed as the human ship crossed 300,000 kilometers, then 180,000. At that range, council energy weapons lost elegance. Convergence cones narrowed, friendly fire risk climbed. Orders stacked up, then contradicted themselves as relay lag stretched past 1.1 seconds. "They're behind our command spine," someone said. Sereth saw it on the holodome. The Resolute had not charged the fleet. It had cut through its center, slipping between relay hubs and command clusters, leaving synchronization bleeding behind it. The Armada no longer looked like a weapon. It looked like traffic. The human ship rolled broadside, not in challenge, but in calculation, and fired its engines again, a controlled burn that placed it precisely where Council firing arcs overlapped least. 12G geometry. The phrase appeared on an observer overlay, auto-tagged by a neutral analytics suite, not propaganda. Description. "They're not faster," Sereth said slowly. "They're earlier." "Yes," the tactician replied. "Everywhere." Command lag spiked to 1.9 seconds, enough to fracture doctrine. Ships fired where allies had been moments earlier, then cut power to avoid fratricide. Formation integrity dropped below 60%. The Resolute leveled out, shedding speed just enough to hold position relative to the disordered fleet. For the first time since contact, it aligned its nose deliberately. Weapons remained cold. That was the most unsettling part. "No escape, Velicors." The words flashed briefly on a coalition feed as predictive paths recalculated and failed. Sereth felt the shift. Not panic, not fear, but certainty changing shape. This was not an engagement unfolding. It was a solution executing. The human ship had rewritten the geometry of the fight using time, mass, and nerve. And now, with the Armada's spine exposed and its movements constrained by its own size, the Resolute finished aligning. The test phase was over. The next action would not be movement at all. The first human shot arrived without spectacle. A narrow band ping swept outward from the Resolute, not an attack, but a measurement. Range, mass, vector certainty. It washed over the densest knot of Council icons, command vessels, relay hubs, ships that made the rest coherent. "Targeting event," the sensor prefect said. "But no energy spike." The railgun fired. There was no beam to track, no warning. Flare. Just a sudden anomaly in the mass register as an 18-kilogram tungsten slug left the barrel at 0.04 C, accelerated across 1,100 meters of rail, and hurled through 120,000 kilometers of space in under a second. The Council flagship lost its bow. Not breached, removed. Armor, decks, and the command core vanished in a straight line so precise the aft. Section continued operating for 0.2 seconds before realizing it no longer had a front. Atmosphere vented. Power failed. The icon went dark. "Primary command vessel destroyed," the system announced. No life signs. Silence hit the chamber like vacuum. The second shot followed 0.9 seconds later. A relay cruiser this time, positioned 40,000 kilometers off axis. The slug punched through its midline, severing data spines and reactor housing in one pass. The ship folded inward, inertia killing what structure remained. "They're firing kinetics," an admiral said, disbelief breaking through discipline. At this range, the Resolute adjusted its nose by half a degree. Missile bays opened. 64 missiles launched cold, coasting on initial impulse with no engine flare. Council point defenses hesitated, threat libraries scrambling to classify inert shapes moving, too fast to be debris. By the time firing solutions settled, the missiles split. Each became 6. 384 bodies curved inward, vectoring through gaps already carved by 12G geometry. Defensive fire intercepted 118. The rest arrived within a 1.7-second window. Impacts were selective. Engines died without breaching crew compartments. Weapon mounts sheared cleanly away. One carrier lost thrust, then gravity, then cohesion, as internal bulkheads failed in sequence, numbers stacked. Time since first kill, 4.8 seconds. Confirmed command kills, 2. Fleet command lag, 2.6 seconds. The Resolute's spine plates parted again. Nuclear signatures, the system warned. Yield estimates, 1.1 to 1.3 megatons. They were not hurled into the fleet. They were placed. 3. Devices arced into the remaining command cluster and detonated at calculated distances. far enough to spare hulls flagged for capture, close enough to collapse shields and overload unprotected systems. EMP ripples overlapped, blinding sensors and stopping hearts. One command ship survived the blast. It died 30 seconds later when its crew blacked out and the vessel drifted into the debris field of its peers. Primary command nodes neutralized, the system announced. 3 of 3. Flagship lost. The stinger flashed across multiple observer feeds, paired with a simple counter. 3. Council coordination disintegrated. Orders duplicated, contradicted, vanished. Ships fired into empty space, then cut power to avoid striking, allies that were no longer where doctrine said they should be. The Resolute kept firing. Railgun slugs stitched disabled hulls with brutal economy. Missiles finished what kinetics opened. No shot repeated a function already achieved. Every impact was logged, timed, and justified. This was not rage. This was accounting. A data burst rode the chaos, unencrypted and calm. Command vessels neutralized, the human voice said. Further resistance will result in continued losses at current efficiency. Efficiency. The word landed heavier than the warheads. Another line followed, colder still. Civilian transports and medical hulls are not targeted. Human losses. Populated the display at the edge of the holodome. 0. Engagement time ticked past 6 minutes. Sereth stood rigid, watching the Armada lose its center. Thousands of ships remained, weapons intact, crews alive. They no longer mattered. The Resolute ceased fire as abruptly as it had begun, weapons hot, vectors solved, targets already queued but unengaged. It did not chase fleeing vessels. It did not punish panic. It waited. Across the battle space, debris fields expanded where authority used to be. Surrender beacons began to flicker on, first one, then dozens, as captains realized the truth had shifted. The human ship had not escalated. It had concluded the argument, and with the Council's spine cut cleanly away, the rest of the fleet faced a choice that arithmetic had already answered for them. The guns went silent by intent. Across the shattered formation, Council vessels drifted or held position, engines throttled down by confusion rather than command. Fires burned where structure had failed. Escape vectors lay open and untouched. The broadcast cut through every channel at once. Not a threat packet, not a surrender demand. A declaration. This transmission is addressed to all vessels, all systems, all observers, the human voice said. It was the same voice as before, steady, unhurried, unraised. This engagement is paused. Paused. Sereth felt the word land with unfamiliar weight. Battles ended or escalated. They did not pause. The holodome shifted from tactical overlays to a wide-spectrum relay map. The signal was not narrowcast. It rode council relays, neutral trade nets, border observatories, reaching out to systems up to 14 light-years away. Humanity was not speaking. To the fleet, it was speaking to the galaxy. We are the United Earth polity, the voice continued. Our laws govern our actions, including during war. A measured pause followed. We do not practice slavery. We do not process populations. We do not erase cultures for efficiency. Icons flickered as ships across the Armada tested the claim. One frigate powered down weapons and bled thrust. The Resolute did nothing. Another followed. Then 7 more. Any vessel that ceases fire and powers down will not be targeted, the broadcast said. Crews who surrender will be taken as prisoners of war under human law. Numbers appeared uninvited at the edge of the display. Surrender beacons active. 112. 219. 403. Prisoners will receive medical care, the voice continued. They will be fed. They will be housed. They will not be harmed. Sereth's mandibles tightened. This was not mercy as performance. This was infrastructure. Command. Personnel responsible for enslavement, population seizure, or extermination orders will be detained pending trial, the voice said. Trials will be public. Evidence will be preserved. Sentences will follow law, not vengeance. A line resolved beneath the words, stark and immovable. We don't kill prisoners. The legal minister inhaled sharply. They're asserting jurisdiction. Yes, Sereth said quietly, and inviting witnesses. A secondary packet followed the broadcast, coordinates for safe corridors, rendezvous points for prisoner transfer, medical docking protocols, translated into council standards with unnerving fluency. The humans had prepared for surrender before they fired a shot. You have 18 minutes to signal compliance, the voice concluded. After that, we will resume operations against armed vessels only. Immunely, that single word redrew the moral geometry of the engagement. Across the battle space, weapons went cold. Surrender lights outnumbered targeting locks. Medical hulls transmitted compliance codes and were acknowledged without interference. Sereth watched a damaged cruiser limp toward a marked corridor, engines failing. No shot followed, no warning burst. The path held. They mean it, the tactician said beside him. Yes, Sereth replied. That's the danger. The broadcast ended without anthem or flourish. No flag filled the screen, just law, transmitted, at the speed of light. Around Saul, the battle stopped being about survival. It became about accountability. Authority did not collapse all at once. It drained away, replaced by procedure and record-keeping. The Resolute remained motionless, weapons ready but restrained, enforcing silence as deliberately as it had enforced destruction. Justice, not vengeance. The phrase appeared briefly on a neutral observer feed, then vanished. In the quiet that followed, surrender ceased to look like defeat. It looked like the only remaining rational choice. They had not arrived in response. The first confirmation came from neutral space, not from any council sensor. An independent observer buoy at the Helios verge, old, underfunded, mostly ignored, pushed a data burst into every open channel it could access. Archived telemetry, long-range gravimetric noise reprocessed with new parameters. Multiple mass shadows detected, the analyst voice said, strained. Not new contacts, long-duration placements. The holodome split and widened. Beyond the immediate battle space, faint markers resolved into clarity, human hulls embedded in shadowed orbits, anchored inside radiation wells, parked along cometary, paths and stellar clutter where scans degraded naturally, cold, dark, silent. Count? Sereth asked. 67 confirmed, the analyst replied. Possibly more beyond resolution limits. 67. Not reinforcements. Not a scramble. A posture. They didn't come when we arrived, the tactician said slowly. They were already here. More feeds joined the cascade. A coalition science vessel replayed gravimetric anomalies logged 43 years earlier. Dismissed at the time as stellar turbulence. A trade consortium released fuel transfer records from depots that should not have existed yet. Border Patrol archives showed human task groups repositioning months before first contact, always just inside acceptable transit margins. Preparation was not recent. They expected confrontation, the legal minister said. Not us specifically, just this. A human data release followed, shared openly with neutral observers who requested clarification. No encryption, no spin. Doctrine excerpts, fleet readiness models, training cycles dated back over 200 years. Each revision logged, each failure annotated, each correction retained. Doctrine Stability Index, 0.98, core principles unchanged for 2 centuries, the analyst read. Incremental refinement only. No wonder there had been no hesitation, no recalibration. This battle had been executed, not discovered. They trained for our weapons, the tactician said, scrolling. Armor test footage shows saturation curves plateauing exactly where our yields peak. Sereth watched simulations labeled with blunt human language. Spine cut, command removal, surrender, cascade. This engagement had been fought thousands of times already. On screens, in drills, in classrooms whose instructors were long dead. Another feed resolved the last doubt. Deep space logistics signatures, far beyond Sol, cycling reactors at low output. Hospital ships powered and staffed. Detention facilities active, empty, waiting. They planned for prisoners, the tactician whispered. Before the first shot. Ready. For centuries. The phrase appeared on a coalition analytic overlay, auto-generated from probability convergence, not propaganda. A conclusion. Sereth felt the weight of it settle. The Council's advantage had always been speed, arrive, overwhelm, process, depart. Humanity had inverted the timeline, stretching readiness across generations until response became automatic. Across the battle space, surrender signals multiplied, not from fear alone, but from comprehension. Resistance no longer looked defiant. It looked naive. The Resolute remained motionless at the center of it all, weapons restrained, posture unchanged. Hidden human ships did not advance. There was no urgency. This was not a species improvising survival. It was a civilization executing a plan whose original architects had never expected to see it used, and prepared it anyway. The galaxy had not stumbled into a war. It had finally reached the point humanity had been ready for all along. Neutralization began when resistance fragmented. With command nodes erased and coordination shattered, the remaining Council vessels stopped behaving like a fleet. Some powered down, some ran, some fired short, panicked bursts into empty space, chasing solutions that no longer existed. Humanity answered with structure. Missile bays along the Resolute's flanks opened in sequence, not all at once, not dramatically, a cadence. 120 missiles launched cold in the first wave, followed by 180 more 30 seconds later. No engine flares, no active guidance until terminal phase. Wave profiles assigned, the human voice reported. Calmly. Disable priority. The missiles coasted through the broken geometry the Council had created itself. When point defenses finally engaged, they did so late and inefficiently. Threat libraries still optimized for energy signatures rather than inert mass. Intercepts were uneven. Missiles split at 28,000 kilometers. Each body became 6, over 400 warheads curved inward, each carrying a single task: engine kill, sensor blind, weapons severance. Impacts were controlled, not explosive. Thrusters vanished. Spinal mounts sheared away. Power buses cracked and went dark. Ships stopped fighting because they could no longer move. Surrender beacons increasing, the system announced. Now, at 1,360 vessels. The Resolute adjusted position by 24 kilometers and launched again. This time, boarding pods. They were crude cylinders compared to Council aesthetics, thick-walled and unapologetic, accelerating hard before cutting thrust and coasting into collision vectors. They struck hulls at controlled angles, magnetic clamps biting through scorched armor. Breaching charges fired inward, precise and contained. Human Marines followed. They moved fast, rifles low, visors opaque. Compartments were cleared in minutes. Resistance ended faster. Council crews, stunned and leaderless, dropped weapons when ordered. Those who did not were restrained by mass and number rather than fire. Casualty tallies updated in real time. Human wounded, 19. Council wounded, 2,870. Council dead, 4041. The imbalance was intentional. Secure, stabilize. Tag, the human voice reminded boarding teams. Tag meant evidence, command logs, cargo manifests, population transfer orders. Every captured hull became a record, its crimes preserved before anyone could erase them. Outside, missile waves continued their work. Not all ships surrendered at once. Some attempted to flee along vectors already flagged as inefficient. They were intercepted by fast-moving human hulls that revealed themselves only long enough to block escape and force deceleration. No pursuit. Running ships were not destroyed. They were tired. Surrender cascade accelerating, the system reported, now at 3,900 vessels. The number climbed steadily, as if gravity itself favored compliance. A cluster of Council destroyers attempted a coordinated breakout, firing wildly to clear space. The Resolute answered with 3 railgun shots, 3 slugs, 3 impacts, engines removed, crew compartments untouched. The destroyers spun helplessly. Boarding authorized, the words flashed briefly across multiple channels, human and alien alike. Sereth watched from the damaged remains of his flagship, now dark and powerless. Authority dissolved around him, not in fire, but in procedure. "This is dismantlement," he said quietly. "Yes," the tactician beside him replied, hands bound. "By design, across the battle space, medical hulls moved freely, marked and respected. Human med teams coordinated triage with captured council physicians, protocols translated and mirrored. Wounded were treated without interrogation. Prisoners were logged, housed, fed. More numbers populated the display. Total surrendered vessels, 6,140, boarded and secured, 3,020, active resistance, 412, 307, 198, a final group attempted reactor overloads to deny capture. Human Marines withdrew immediately. Missile strikes followed, precise and terminal, vaporizing the ships before detonation could scatter debris into civilian lanes. "No prisoners when none are offered," the human voice stated, flat and factual. Silence followed each destruction, heavy and instructive. Within 3 hours, organized resistance ended. The Council Armada did not die screaming. It unraveled, ship by ship, choice by choice, until surrender was not fear-driven but inevitable. Total neutralized. The overlay appeared as the last weapons lock disengaged. The Resolute powered down its railgun capacitors and rotated slowly, surveying the field. Thousands of inert hulls drifted in ordered lanes, surrender lights pulsing at standardized intervals. Human ships held perimeter positions, not triumphant, just thorough. Sereth felt the truth settle with finality. This was not annihilation. It was enforcement. The galaxy had long believed dominance required cruelty. Humanity demonstrated something far more unsettling: the ability to stop precisely when it chose to, and still remain unchallenged. As prisoner transfers stabilized and unused missile racks sealed themselves automatically, the battle transitioned, cleanly, deliberately, into occupation, evidence handling, and law. And far beyond the quiet field of captured ships, deep sensors remained active, listening outward, because this operation had never been the end state. It had only been one phase, executed exactly as planned. Mercy arrived with scanners, restraints, and medical lights. Prisoner transfers began within 40 minutes of the last confirmed resistance. Council crews were moved under guard, not to holding pens, but to triage decks assembled from modular human hulls. Wounded were stabilized before identification. Rank was logged after bleeding stopped. Sereth watched through a transparent partition as his surviving officers were processed in sequence, names recorded, injuries scanned, personal devices sealed into evidence containers, no blows, no shouted commands, only procedure. Prisoner count update, a human officer said evenly. 41,206. Reconcile every 10 minutes. Numbers mattered here. Medical teams worked in disciplined silence. A council engineer with a crushed thorax was intubated beside a human marine suffering shrapnel wounds. Same equipment, same urgency. The message needed no translation. "This violates customary post-engagement conduct," Sereth said to the guard stationed beside him. "Yes," the guard replied. "Custom is not law." Processing hubs came online across Sol orbit, each tagged with jurisdiction codes and evidentiary intake protocols. Data extracted from seized vessels streamed into secured archives. Labor manifests, population seizure orders, extermination authorizations bearing signatures and timestamps. Nothing was discarded. A system-wide announcement followed, quieter than the earlier broadcast, but no less precise. "All detainees will be informed of charges," the human voice said. "All will have representation. Proceedings will be recorded. Verdicts will follow statute." A pause. "Some of you will be acquitted." That line cut deeper than condemnation. "We don't kill prisoners." The phrase appeared again, embedded into detention interfaces as a standing directive. Beyond Sol, the galaxy reacted. Neutral systems that had observed the engagement began transmitting formal inquiries, not pleas, not threats, but legal questions. Jurisdictional reach, enforcement, limits, treaty compatibility. Earth answered publicly, citing case law, precedent, and enforcement doctrine without redaction. The effect propagated fast. A border system 3 jumps rimward, transmitted its declaration 11 hours later, withdrawing from Council authority and requesting provisional inclusion under Earth-recognized legal protection. Another followed, then 5 more. Their statements were structurally identical, differing only in signature and local timestamp. Reasons cited: access to binding law. Sovereignty shift confirmed, an analyst reported. 17 systems in transition, trade lanes rerouting. Voluntarily. Human fleets did not redeploy to occupy them, courts did. Arbitration teams arrived ahead of garrisons. Observers were invited. Proceedings were streamed live without delay. Charges were read without flourish. Evidence displayed without commentary. Sereth sat through the first hearing, restraints disengaged, but presence logged. The prosecutor listed counts in a level voice: forced labor, population displacement, extermination planning, each count carried, a statute reference and a maximum sentence range. When asked to respond, Sereth spoke clearly. I acknowledge jurisdiction. The chamber did not react. A clerk recorded the response and advanced the docket. Outside, surrender beacons were replaced by compliance signals. Former council patrol ships accepted human inspectors without resistance. Merchant guilds amended contracts to reflect new arbitration authority. The transition was quiet and relentless. Justice, not vengeance. The words appeared once on a public relay, then vanished. By the end of the cycle, prisoner intake stabilized. Mortality remained under 0.9%. No retaliatory incidents recorded. Human ships held position, watchful but restrained, as if daring anyone to mistake mercy for weakness. Sereth understood then what had truly fallen: not a fleet, not an empire, a system that wielded force without consequence. As the first trials recessed and the second session queued automatically, Sul no longer resembled a battlefield. It resembled an institution, and institutions, once established, exert gravity. The galaxy was already moving. The silence after victory lasted 27 seconds. Then a low-priority alert chimed, almost apologetic, routed through redundant filters before anyone allowed it onto a shared display. A passive sensor returned from a listening array far beyond Sol's heliopause, flagged first as noise, then reclassified. Unknown signature, the system reported. Outer Rim origin. Human ships did not move. Prisoner transfers continued. Courts remained scheduled. Victory did not interrupt process. Clarify unknown, a watch officer said. The analyst's fingers moved faster. Profile mismatch, not council, not coalition. Mass shadow exceeds predicted hull limits by a factor of 12. The holodome shifted. Tactical clutter faded, replaced by a sparse starfield at the galaxy's edge. There, barely perceptible, was a distortion in the dark, not a ship, awake, distance estimate resolved. 41 light-years, velocity followed, 0.08 C sustained. Course projection aligned slowly, inexorably, inward. No transponder, the analyst said. No emissions beyond residual gravitic distortion. Sereth watched from custody as the room changed posture. This was not alarm. It was recognition. Cross-reference, the human commander said. All archives. Ancient probes. Pre-council. Extinction records. Fringe reports dismissed as stellar collapse or navigational error. 12 systems along the outer rim went silent over 4 millennia. No debris. No radiation scars. Just absence. A provisional designation appeared, dry and unembellished. Outer Rim Exterminator class. Confirmed contact? Someone asked. None, the analyst replied. But trajectory intersects historic void zones. Every one. The human commander nodded once. Update readiness condition. No alarm sounded, no weapons armed. Instead, fleets adjusted by kilometers, reopening sealed corridors. Logistics ships altered cycles. Hospital capacity expanded. Courts finalized dockets and queued adjournments without urgency. Preparation resumed. This engagement is concluded, the human voice broadcast, galaxy-wide. Proceedings will continue. A pause followed, then a second line, added for accuracy rather than reassurance. Further operations may be required. On the edge display, The distant wake persisted, indifferent to observation. Whatever had erased worlds did not negotiate. It did not administer. It arrived. Time to intercept. "If course holds," the tactician asked. The analyst recalculated twice. 6 to 8 years, plenty of time. The Resolute rotated, slow and deliberate, reorienting its long axis away from the broken Council Armada and toward the dark between stars. Hidden human. Ships adjusted in quiet synchrony, ancient readiness sliding back into place. Sereth exhaled, a sound caught between relief and dread. He understood now why mercy had not been optional. You do not face what is coming with a galaxy built on fear. You face it with law, unity, and weapons held by those who know exactly when to use them and when not to. Beyond the quiet rim, something old was moving, and for the first time in a very long while, it was moving toward a species that had been waiting.